Buckle up, sports fanatics. This is the Sports Chasers Podcast, your HQ for in-depth sports talk. Join host Kevin L. Warren and crew as they dissect the hottest stories, ignite debates, and bring you closer to the action. From locker room whispers to expert takes, we cover it all. It's game time, so strap in and grab a drink. The Sports Chasers Podcast starts right now.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great Saturday morning, man. It's the Sports Chasers Podcast. We're not live, man, but we're doing a little hockey this morning. We're going to recap the Four Nations tournament face-off that commenced this past week in Boston and on Thursday, with USA being defeated by Team Canada. And we got the hockey dude. He's gonna recap it and recap the I think it's a successful tournament. Dan, good morning. How are you, sir? What's happening?
Nothing, just coming at you from, not live, but in my igloo in Winnipeg. Yeah, just kidding. It's just a little chilly here today. But good to see you. Yeah, I'm ready to talk some hockey. What a great tournament.
I opened up. I think it was a successful tournament. I think the NHL has stolen all the glory. I won't say stolen the glory. They earned all the glory because they competed this week, and there's been a lot of headway. We won't talk about the other league, but it is what it is. What happens when you compete? People want to watch, man. That's just the bottom line. Let me go by from the stats here. Four Nations final, from ESPN Sports. Four Nations final between U.S. Canada draws record ratings. From ESPN News Services, the Four Nations Face-Off Championship game between the United States and Canada on Thursday night marked the largest audience for a hockey game on ESPN. The network announced Friday the game in which Canada beat the U.S. 3-2 in overtime thriller garnered 9.3 million viewers, with 10.4 million viewers at its peak. It was also the largest audience for a non-NFL event on ESPN. Let me read that again. It was also the largest audience for a non-NFL event on ESPN. Edmonton All-Star Connor McDavid scored with 8-18 into overtime to lift Canada over the United States to win the championship game and the inaugural best tournament at Boston's TD Garden. Jordan Binnington held the Americans to 2 goals on 33 shots. I'm gonna hand it off to Dan. Well, let me just put my thing. That thing that I read twice, that this is the most, besides non-NFL, that they gross. That says a lot of what I was saying here. Let me just go back and read it again. The game in which, hold on, let me get it here. It says, why did I lose it? I'm losing myself. 3.2 thriller, got 9.3 votes. It was also the largest audience for a non-NFL event on ESPN Plus. So the ratings speak for itself. I think hockey, the NHL, Gary Bettman. I know Gary Bettman. A lot of people take out the strap on him, and and they give the NHL a whipping. But I think he got it right this week. Dan, go ahead, take it away.
Well, just to add to your ESPN totals, Sportsnet in Canada, I believe they had an average of 5.7 million. So that's pretty damn near 15 million in North America. Watch that game on a Thursday night at 8:00 start. So I think that says a lot for the product that they put on the ice. And, like you were saying, shout out to Gary Bettman. The NHL set this up. They hadn't played really best on best since 2016. So 9 years? There are a lot of guys that were chomping at the bit. And you saw some, in the interviews that after, we'll get into how this whole tournament unfolded. But, they talked to some of the Americans after their first game, and they knew they were playing Canada on Saturday. They said this is the biggest game in their life. Like Brady to Chuck, he plays for Ottawa. I don't think he's ever played in the playoffs yet. I don't think they've made it. And for him, this is going to be the biggest stage for him to play on. But that being said, you got to give it to Barry Getman. The NHL set this up. but this tournament wasn't made by just having the tournament. The players on all the nations, they all bought into this. They all played hard. They played for their country. The team, the emblem on their chest, and the effort, the intensity, in every game was amazing. And we're gonna kind of go through them real quick. But that being said, kudos for the NHL setting this up, and kudos for the players for pouring their hearts into this and making it what it was. The players made it an awesome tournament because of how well and how hard they played.
Explain to the audience when they say best on best, what are they talking about?
So, you have your all-star teams where, the games, it doesn't matter what sport you talk about. And, a lot of those are fan voted or whatever. But generally, those are, the best players at that position, form a team. Kind of the same idea here. But this is, whoever, Team Canada, whoever is, their GM of that program and the coaches that they pick. You had John Cooper for Tampa Bay was their head coach. And the assistants, they pretty much handpick a team.
Right.
There's no voting. They just pick the best players. And the same thing with Team USA with Mike Sullivan as the coach.
Mm-hmm.
And our boy got on the bench.
What are you talking about?
Torts.
Yeah.
Torts was one of the coaches. You got to love that. But that being said, all these teams, doesn't matter which country, you had Finland, Sweden, Canada, USA. They took all the best NHL players from that country. Well, I'll get into that a little bit later, but basically everybody that's on these teams
for the
most part are either top line or maybe second line, but they're all the best players. So you could have McDavid at center, Crosby at a wing, and Nate McKinnon at the other wing, with Kyle McCarr and Jonathan Toews, or not Jonathan, the other Toews that plays for Colorado, the defenseman, as your starting five. So you have three of the best NHL players going as your top line, and backed with the best defenseman in the league. And that's pretty much all down the lineup for all these teams. So you're getting, like I was saying, like if you watched any of the pre-games at any of these tournaments, that especially with USA Canada, the margin of error between both of these teams is maybe thick as a piece of paper. And it's, and you saw that Saturday, which we'll get into. But yeah, this was just everybody on the ice is one of the best players in the world for the respective country.
Right.
So it was great. It doesn't matter which game.
Nah, so I was hooked into it last weekend when they had games when the Americans USA played Sweden and Finland. Excuse me, I said Sweden and Finland, right?
Yeah,
correct?
Yeah, both
correct. I just like the fact that again, I said it the other night, man. I just need you to compete. Just compete. That's what sports is about, competing. Those guys was hitting hard. Those guys was chasing down pucks in the corner. They was I think there was even one boarding call. I think I was like, man, they are really going at it. Even to the fact I was listening to sports radio last night on Sirius XM, Fox Sports Net, and they were saying that Matthew Tkachuk might even play this coming Saturday because he's still a little banged up.
Oh, bro, there's probably gonna be 4 or 5 guys that don't play their first game for their NHL team.
But you know what? I don't hear, and maybe because I'm not. Again, I love hockey. I listen to it. I'm not as well versed into it. And yes, we have it on this channel because we want everybody to enjoy all the sports. That's what we're called, the sports chasers, man. But I don't hear nobody whining and complaining. I don't hear the teams crying that, hey, these guys are a little nicked up or whatever. What's your thoughts on that?
Well,
or are we going to hear that?
you're probably like where you're going to hear that is going to be if you're watching the broadcast of that team, they're going to make mention of, hey, case in point, Matthew Chuck. If you watched him, I think it was it this? Yeah, when they lost 2-1 to Sweden, they really didn't need to win that game, but it's at some point I think he tweaked the groin, and so he went back out and tried to play another shift, and luckily they got a kind of a quick whistle with a cover up, I think it was by the goalie, and he just came back to the bench like, no,
Right.
no, and then as soon as he got on the bench, you could see him talking to Tortorella like, I can't go. So they had a couple days between Monday and Thursday. You probably really shouldn't have played Thursday, but unless they amputated his leg and he couldn't skate, he was going to play in that game. And if you notice towards late in that game, he didn't play a whole lot.
Right.
But that's kind of like the culture of hockey, though. And I know PK ruffled a whole bunch of feathers. And when he played, I kind of thought he was an idiot. Like if you go back to when he played with Nashville, and he was doing everything he could, tackling Sid and the whole 9 yards, and cursing each other out back and forth going to the bench. I know there's a video of that, but he knew he had to do whatever he could to get Sid off his game. So he's like a Brad Marchand, but he played defense, an agitator. That was part of his game. Very good at it. But, like we talked, he's 100% on. It's the culture of hockey. Are you injured or are you hurt? Because it doesn't matter. The culture is you're going to play until you can't go.
Right.
If anybody watches Shoresy, I think season 3, there's a good example of that mentality, in a TV show that they do. But there's going to be a lot of players like that. Like I could tell you right now, it will not shock me when I turn on the game at 3:00 today to watch the Penguins Capitals play that Sydney's not playing. We all know he got hurt in the Jersey game. I think it was 2 games before this tournament. And there's a lot of questions whether he was going to play or not, because I believe he got his elbow got injured in some fashion. Mm-hmm. Well, if you watch the game or any of the Team Canada games, he's playing winger. He wasn't playing center.
Right.
Why? So he didn't have to take faceoffs. But if you watch the championship game, when it got late in the third period and when he was out there on overtime, who was taking faceoffs? He was. So it was like, okay, this actually matters now. Move, get out of the dot. I'm taking this. And that's
out the dot. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the mentality. And like I said, there's examples abundant across the league over the years. The Department of Player Safety, what the hell was his name back in the day? But his kid played on Boston, and they were on the penalty kill. The defenseman took a slap shot, broke his leg, and he hopped around on one skate for another 45 seconds to a minute until they got a whistle and went to the bench. Some sports that happens.
Don't do it.
No, I'm just saying, like they're on the ground and they're trying to get a whistle. Doesn't matter what sport.
Yeah,
they're trying to get that stoppage in play so they can get off. But the mentality is, you play until you can't go anymore.
Right.
And
yeah. Well, I guess you're talking for football. Yeah, football. Yeah, they're trying to gain an edge and stop the clock or whatever. Yeah, so they'll.
I mean,
yes. If you play football, it happens.
Yeah, I mean, you look at college game now. There's always that phantom guy with a cramp.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, all of a sudden he's like,
and he goes to the sideline for one play, and then he sprints back in the next play.
He got some Gatorade though, bro.
Yeah. Hey, shout out to Gatorade. That was Florida that invented that. Florida University, I think it was. Anyway,
yes. Mm-hmm.
Get back on track. But that's kind of the mentality is, this game or this tournament was exhibition. It didn't count for anything, whether it be standings, contract talks at the end of the year. This was just an exhibition, and it was more intense than any regular season game. And it really had the makings of a playoff series. Now, this tournament per se, the makeup of it, I don't think you're going to see this every year, because if you do that, it's going to lose some of the shine, the luster.
Right.
It'll lose the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
But with them trying to factor in, I know they're going to play in the Olympics next year. And then I think what they're going to try to do is offset this with the Olympics. So 2 years from now, they'll have this again. And then the Olympics, try to get it so it's like the Olympics a year off, 4 nations type tournament off the Olympics. You know what I mean? Try to work it into that, where it's every couple of years, 2 years off of the Olympics.
And then you'll have all-star games in between. So forth, correct?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Like the other thing that I would like to see, and I don't know that this would ever come to fruition, but what we saw in 2 games with USA Canada, I know way back in the day, they had Russia, or the USSR back in those days. They came and did a US tour where they played NHL teams or whatever. But I'd like to see just Canada and USA kind of like do best of 3 series or best of 5 series.
Right.
And move it around, like excuse me, like a summit series, something like that, where they play a couple games in the US, couple in Canada, to see, truly, or even do it like a playoff, Stanley Cup playoff, best of 7. I think that would be cool.
Again, whatever it is, NHL fans, I just want competition. That's it.
I don't think anybody thought this tournament was going to be what it was. Well, let me take that back. They kind of knew what the tournament was going to be, but I don't think any of us thought that it was going to be as intense and hard played like it was a Stanley Cup final game.
Right.
I mean, kudos to every team and all the players that played, because they made this into probably one of the most exciting All-Star weekend breaks that, like, I don't ever want to see the All-Star game again. I really don't. Yeah, I'd rather watch some format of something like this, no matter how they do it. And, in years coming, they may add different. That's why I say it may not be a 4-nation type tournament, but it'll be some variation because, political climate and, that's going on right now. There's some reasons why,
Russia wasn't in it.
Yeah. And like, I know on our Thursday show, I went over the possibility. I saw a Twitter post of what their team makeup could have been. And boy, was it good too. Like they might have thrown a monkey wrench into this whole USA Canada thing.
Right.
Just how good that team could have been. But like, things change in the years to come. Things simmer down or whatever.
Who's the best Russian player right now?
I don't know, man. I mean, look what Ovechkin's done over his career.
Yeah,
over his career. I mean, he's got 20 plus goals this year, and he starts his
closing in on the great one. Yep.
And he starts today, going back after that. I want to say he's only like 18 away now, somewhere in that neighborhood. But yeah, like him, Kucherov for Tampa. He's a little bit older up in years, but man, he's nasty. Or just the things he can do with the puck. His passing, his shooting. their goaltending, like this, their whole team, I think would have been just top notch too.
Yeah.
But I guess we can kind of go through, because the way this tournament, we'll just set up the tournament. So the way this tournament worked is each nation played each other once. So you had the 4 teams. USA played Finland, they played Sweden, they played Canada, and same for all the teams, respectively. So if you won in regulation, you got 3 points. If you won in overtime,
you got
2. And I think if you lost in overtime, you got 1. And then out of those games, the teams that had the most points played in the championship game. So USA won their first 2 games. They had 6. And they beat Canada in regulation. So I don't think Canada got a point. But Canada beat Sweden in overtime. Mm-hmm. So Canada had to beat Finland on Monday to beat, because all 3 of the other teams only had 2 points going into the last game. So Canada ended up wins in regulation. They ended up with 5, and that's where we got the rematch on Thursday for the championship, because Sweden and Finland didn't have enough points. Yes. Well, Sweden had 5 points, but I think the way it worked out that they both had a win, and Canada had the overtime win. Both of Sweden's other points were overtime losses. So that being said, that's kind of how that shook out. But we can kind of go in and just go through the games leading up to the championship. So it started, what was it? The 12th, Canada played Finland. Canada went up 2-0 in the first. McKinnon and Marchand scored for them. And then in the second, Brodin scored for Sweden. And then Mark Stone ended the period with a goal for Canada. So they were up 3-1. And then they kind of got in a little trouble here. In the third, Kempe scored and Eriksson Ek scored to tie the game to send it to overtime. And then the other cool thing that they did with this tournament was normal NHL rules. It's a 5-minute overtime, and then they would go to
3-on-3.
They'd go to a shootout.
Okay.
So they start out overtime 3-on-3,
right?
And then after 10 minutes, they go to a shootout. That being the case, if it would have been NHL rules, they would have been in the shootout, because Marner didn't score until 6:06 of the overtime. So there was 4 minutes, a little less, 3 minutes, 54 seconds left in the game. So he ended it. So Canada won game 1. Just a note in that game, Crosby had 3 assists.
He was a bad boy that first game. I was like, wow.
Well, if you go back and look at that overtime goal, he brought the puck up in probably about 8 feet into the offensive zone for Canada, and then dropped past it back to center ice and skated back outside the zone. And Marner came right down the middle and just buried a nice wrist shot on the Sweden goalie. And then we moved to Thursday night when USA started their first game. Didn't start out too great, where Kokiari for Finland scored to put them up 1-0, but they came back. Brady Tkachuk scored to make it 1-1. Going into the second, the only goal, I believe this is the one that Faber took the wrist shot from the point and Boldy tipped in. Very nice tip. But Matt Boldy scored to make it 2-1. And this was probably the only game of any game in this tournament that was kind of lopsided, because the Tkachuk boys, they kind of went off on this one. So Brady scored in the first. Matthew led off the scoring in the third period on the power play. They were up 3-1. Then Getzel scored to make it 4-1. Then Brady said, no, Matt, I'm going to score another one. He made it 5-1. And then Matthew got the power play goal and USA won this game 6-1. And Hellebuck had a hell of a tournament. He played great. And we'll get into Biddington here later.
Bad boy the other night.
And then Finland played Sweden. And your boy Zibanejad, he opened the scoring. And then Lindell. Yep. And then Lindell and Rantanen scored for Finland. So they ended the period up 2-1. And then Dahlin and Carlson had a really good tournament too for Sweden. So Sweden was up 3-2 going into they were up 3-2. Then Barkov from the Stanley Cup champions, Panthers, he made it 3-3. And then Michael Granlund, this guy's probably going to be a hot commodity here at the trade deadline. He scored to make it 4-3 in overtime. Finland wins that game. And then that was the 1:00 game on Saturday.
Right.
And then probably the mother of all games, USA Canada, Saturday night.
Which was good.
Yeah. What's this say? So I know there's a lot of casual fans that, watch hockey, especially like Olympics and, tournaments like this, and really don't understand the ins and outs of, why things are done or why things happen and that kind of thing. So if you follow hockey and you're a fan of the NHL or a team in the NHL and you've watched playoff hockey, there's, setting the tone. This game was at the Bell Center in Montreal. They booed the national anthem.
They did.
Which, that's the political shit. I don't care. They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, we don't care.
I just want good hockey.
Yes.
And that I was not disappointed. But that being said, there's a lot to be made of them orchestrating these fights at the beginning of the game. So we had 3 fights in the first 9 seconds. That being said, this is just kind of like a playoff series. You get into the first game. Doesn't always happen at the beginning of the game, but you get towards, like, say you're getting beat by, 4-1, 2 minutes left. What usually happens? They muck it up. You get some fights. And the purpose of that is to send the message, we're not going away.
Nope.
You don't intimidate us. We're here for the duration. So the Chuck boys and TJ Miller, they decide, hey, we're going to send a message. You're not going to bully us. We're in your barn, but we're here. We're coming to play. And they set the tone by starting these 3 fights at the beginning of the game. Call it WWE, whatever. Here's the thing. It's not scripted. USA kids, yes, they had it in their mind. They won the fight. But guess what? The other team didn't know that.
Right.
Brandon Hagel didn't know that. I'm trying to think. Bennett didn't know it. Peryanko, the third fight, you got to figure, all right, they're starting shit. It's coming.
Let's go. Right.
Yeah. But that being said, if these guys just look at him like, get out of here. I ain't doing that. I'm playing hockey. That doesn't happen. But that's Canada saying, you're in our house. You're not going to bully us.
Around.
Yeah. So you want to go? Let's go. And the end result of all that was that building was electric. There wasn't a person sitting down. That place was going bananas. And all that did was raise the bar of, people, being interested, invested in watching this. Because, it's the only sport that you're allowed to do that and still play.
I think too, Dan, you made a very good point, man. You talk about the casual fans, and hopefully casual fans, you guys have got hooked enough to maybe pick a hockey fan or pick a hockey team to follow or a player, whatever you want to do. Like I said, I follow hockey, I watch hockey, I know hockey, I don't know it like Dan. But I do know this. that fighting's for real. They've been fighting, and we had an interview with Mr. Bruce Dalbiggin, who's a giant in Canada media and in journalism in Canada, man. And he was saying, hey, it's the thing. It's legislated by hockey. Now it used to be, I think because Dan was on me. The rules have kind of changed in the NHL where they don't fight as much because it was just getting too much with all the goons and the thugs and stuff like that, slashing, better players. So they kind of outlawed that portion of hockey. But, fighting is still allowed. And no, the other night was not scripted. That's just what they do in hockey. And so casual fans, hey, if you like hockey, just lock into it. And I think it's a beautiful sport. I think it's one of the best sports to watch in person. You got to go in person. If you go in person, it's phenomenal to see these big, tall dudes on skates, ladies too, excuse me, going at it and following this little black frozen little rubber puck around and doing all types of stuff to maneuver to get the ultimate is what is the score goal. Go ahead, Dan.
No, but that being said, that place was just going banana lands.
Correct.
From that point on.
Yes.
And then you had McJesus get the puck. Like the one guy you do not want to have a full head of steam going through the neutral zone, catch a puck in stride. And if you watch that goal, both USA defenders were like a New York subway turnstile. Click, click. That's what the noise they made when they turned, because he was gone. And he came in and just an absolute beautiful backhand goal, top shelf. And, and Bennington got an assist on that goal. He gave it up. He gave the puck to Doughty, and Doughty just ripped that pass from his own zone right to the center ice, and off he went. So Canada was up 1-0 in the first, but then you had Jake Getzel. He scored from, I guess it'd be right around the face-off dot, outside, like to the left of the dot, more towards the boards on a snapshot. And so he tied it. It was 1-1. And coming into this game, I think Bennington gave up a poo-poo one against Sweden. This one, it was soft. Like this is one he should have had. Right. And I would almost guarantee he'd tell you the same thing. But it's a game. It's a small 3-inch vulcanized rubber puck that it found its way between his pads. But that being said, we go to the second period. Dylan Larkin, he scores on a nice wrist shot, top of the circle. He just ripped it far side. And then third period, Jake got the empty netter, sealed the deal. So they win in regulation 3-1. So that right there gave USA 6 points. So they automatically made the final.
Right.
So coming into Monday's game, that meant Canada had to win in regulation, and it didn't matter what USA did. They were already in. So the other three teams were fighting to see who played USA. So Canada on Monday, they played Finland. And this was a do or die game. And coming out of the gate, they pretty much, McKinnon scored, or McDavid scored first. And after he scored, McKinnon scored, then Braden Point scored. So at the end of the first, we were up 3-0, or Canada was up 3-0. And then we get to the second period, McKinnon does it again. So they're up 4-0. And then start of the third, you had first goal was Esa Lindell, and then Granlund, like I said, he scored, and then boom, right again, Granlund again scored again. So now it's 4-3. And it's do or die for Canada. They can't give up that one and get tied and go to overtime. But Crosby, he's trying to think who it was, but he blew somebody up at center ice. And when he hit the guy, the puck just kind of died right at his feet. Right. He just kind of whacked it from center ice and put it in the empty net. So Canada ended up winning in 5-3. And then it came down, Sweden and USA played the late game. Your boy Chris Kreider, he made an appearance. He scored to make it 1-0, and then from there, Gustav Nyquist scored and Jesper Bratt scored for 2-1. And that's the way the game ended. So Sweden ended up beating USA for that one. But that meant Canada made it to the final. And then that brought us to Thursday's game, the championship game, where Canada and USA played. And here's kind of the interesting thing. If we go back to the Saturday game with all the fights and everything, there was a little bit more that happened in that game that had an effect on Thursday's game. And I know watching the game, I saw like they put the little stat in the top corner of the screen, and McAvoy, the defenseman from Boston, it showed he had 4 hits, 2 against McDavid and 2 against Crosby. In an NHL game, that wouldn't really happen, because if you saw the hits that he had, he absolutely blew up McKinnon along the wall. And I don't know if that's where he got hurt, because he ended up not playing the Monday game.
Right.
And didn't play in the finals either, because he had an injury, and I think he got an infection or something. But he ended up going to the hospital. But he was they did show him, he read the lineup card for the championship game in the locker room, which was good to see that he was back and doing well. But like those kind of hits, you might get one, but
right.
you keep hitting the star player like that. But that's kind of where this Thursday game that we're going to talk about, this is where it kind of differs. So USA, they tried to do, set the tone on the Saturday game, because they kind of knew this is probably who they're going to play after the way that the games went coming into that Saturday game. And so, I'm trying to think. I think it was somebody at work was asking me, well, do you think that, it's going to be like that again? I'm like, no, this isn't there. This stuff's not going to happen unless somebody gets hit dirty. And I liken this to like the Saturday game with the fights was game 1 or game 2.
Correct. Yes.
Setting the tone. Game 7 was Saturday or Thursday's championship game.
You don't take dumb penalties.
And good thing you mentioned that. There was only 1 penalty in this game. USA had a 2-minute penalty. Other than that, no penalties.
And that was in the third period, I believe. Late in the third period. Third period or second period. I'm not sure, but I do remember that stat. And
it was the second.
Second, okay.
And it was your boy Trocheck. he tripped Bennett.
Right, that's how I remember it.
But like the Thursday game was all business, and it like going into this game, both teams, were hurt. Like Theodore, he broke his wrist early. I think the first game for Canada, Shea Theodore, the defenseman, and then they had to do a little bit of swapping to. And I think the kid from Dallas, they brought Harley, the defenseman. So he took his place. And then for the U.S., obviously McAvoy was out.
Mm-hmm.
Matthews Chuck, I know his leg was still messed up, but he went. So like Crosby's elbow, is probably not great either. He still went. So it was one of those things where like this game was just so well played. And it's funny, if you listen to Messier at the end of the first period, he said, with the amount of talent that is on both of these teams and the ability to just create and score beautiful goals, both the goals in the first period were greasy. The McKinnon goal, that thing had eyes. He shot that like probably 10 feet inside the blue line, wrist shot, and it went through probably 4 guys, top corner, held the buck. Not much he could do because he can't really see because everybody's in front of him.
Yeah, he's being screened. Correct.
And then, you look at the USA goal that tied it up, Brady Chuck's goal. Matthews came around the net trying to do a wraparound, lost the puck off his stick, but it went straight up the middle. And Chuck just fucking whacked at it.
You're good with 30 minutes. Yeah.
And it just kind of like it like hit sticks and just fluttered in, and as a goalie, there's not much you could do because you're playing the puck and then you see him swing his stick and you're assuming like where the stick's going to hit the puck, the angle where it's going, then it gets tipped and it just flutters off to the side. You can't fault him on that.
Right.
It just is what it is. But then this game had the making of game one between these two on Saturday. Canada scored early, USA tied it late. Then we went to the second. What happens? Jake Sanderson from Ottawa, the defenseman, he gets a greasy goal. He pinches down in front of the net, and he scores a wrister to make it 2-1. And it kind of the same thing that happened previously. But then, Sam Bennett came back, made it 2-2. That was the end of the scoring in the second period. So in the third period, there was no scoring. But like USA had a ton of chances. There was a couple of posts, I think, for both teams. And then we
go. I was just saying that post kept clinging.
Mm-hmm.
That night, I was like, man, this is pretty insane, man. How they say baseball is a game of inches, football is a game of inches, hockey is definitely a game of inches because that post, when it pings, it's not unless it goes into the net. That's the only ping that you like when it goes into the net and lights the lamp and you hit a horn.
Yeah, the sound of the ping will kind of tell you what the puck is, where the puck's going. Like if you hit on the inside or the outside of the post, or the completely different sound than when you hit it flush. But so they're going to overtime, and like at the end of the day, this game was pretty much even down the board. Like USA had a lot more shots in the third period. They had, 8-4, and then it was 6-4 in overtime, and they had 6 more shots in the game. But Canada didn't need that many to win. But like faceoffs were, 50%. Like I said, there was only 2 minutes in penalties for the U.S. Hits were 28-25 USA. Blocked shots were 27-19 USA. Giveaways, USA had 23. Canada only had 8. Takeaways were even. So this is like this. Game one of these two could have very easily been the same thing. This, that's how close these teams were. This could have been an overtime game. It just so happened that, the way it worked out, the USA was able to get the empty netter, get to this game. But this game, like we talked with Bruce the other day, well, at least Matthews and Marner, one of the Leafs is going to win a championship. And it just so happened that Marner's the one that won it this time. And he had a good game. He had 2 assists. He assisted on the game tying goal and the game winning goal. And for the U.S., I thought Matthews had a great game. He had a lot of opportunities late to end this and to score and win. It just, the puck luck just didn't work out. But as good as he played, because he had assists on both the USA goals, I want to go to the game winner.
Go ahead.
So I wish I had a still picture of this, but
go ahead.
So they take the face off, and it's McDavid and Matthews. And McDavid tries to push the puck forward. The puck ends up going in the corner, and it gets rimmed up around to the point. The defenseman holds it in. I think it was Makar. So he rips the puck back in around the wall. Marner's on the goal line on the far side of the goal. So the puck makes it all the way around to him. The USA defenseman that was back there starts going towards Marner. Matthews is the center. He's on the side of the net. He breaks towards Marner. And I want to say Hannafin had Braden Point covered in the crease. But who did they leave wide open in the slot? Connor McDavid. And like, I understand like the situation, overtime game, blah, blah,
that's good
blah.
enough for you?
Well, that's where he scored. So
right.
On the to, I guess it would be McDavid's left is where Marner is.
Correct.
So he passed from the left side to the middle of the ice. But Matthews chased the puck with the other defenseman. So they had two guys going to the puck since the defenseman was behind the net, Matthews really should have just stayed at home with McDavid. You know, in hindsight's 2020. I mean, I get it. You know, it's overtime, championship game. You know, you're just trying to stop the puck or get the puck. So as the defenseman went, Matthews went, puck went right past Matthews, right on Connor's stick, and he absolutely roofed it. And I was watching it, and as soon as I saw the puck rim around and I saw two guys going to the puck, I'm like, and who was standing in the middle? I'm like, damn it, game over. And sure enough, you know, but kudos to Canada. I mean, they played hard, and, you know, their star players played well all tournament. I think it was McKinnon had 4 goals in this tournament, you know, and he had the first one. Let's see. So, yeah, so McDavid, he had 5 points in the tournament. Crosby had 5. McKinnon had 4. And like I was talking earlier, like if watching this game, it's like somebody nailed Kreider's pants to the bench because he did not get on the ice much. And the one thing, looking back, there's a couple things I'd like to change about this tournament. So, the championship game was playoff hockey rules, basically.
Right.
Instead of playing 10 minutes shootout, they were playing until someone scored. So if McDavid doesn't score and nobody scores, at end of 20 minutes, they go back to the locker room, they resurface the ice, and then come back out and play another 20 or however it takes till someone scores. So I thought that was pretty cool. Players probably were like, let's end this because we're dead tired. Because that's the thing is with this tournament, because I saw where they were asking, you know, some of the players what they thought about the 10-minute, and they were like, you know, I'm already going out and giving my all for my shift, you know, and getting off the ice, you know. So when we get to that overtime, and generally in overtime, you shorten the bench. So whatever's your 4th line or 3rd line, they might not see the ice that much. But this overtime, they still play 5-on-5. They didn't go to 3-on-3. It was 5-on-5 till somebody scored. But getting back to the Kreider thing, like, to me, like, you had Kreider, you had Nelson, you had Trocheck, right? Those are kind of role players. And I think kind of in a tournament like this or championship game where you're playing the talent level of Canada, that maybe you need to go with guys that can put the puck in the net. Because if you're not going to play them
right
late in the third, like the last 10 minutes of the third or in overtime, what's the point of them being on the team? So a couple things I'd like to see. There was a lot of hoopla about like subs and injured players, who can play, who can't play. USA was trying to get Quinn Hughes there. He wasn't even cleared by the doctor to play because he was hurt going into this. And I'm like, that's dumb. But Tage Thompson and Brett Pesce were on their way to Boston in case they needed them. But my thing is, like, I don't know how many extra players they're allowed to have, but just make the roster. Like, say you got 12 forwards, 6 defensemen, that's 18, and 2 goalies normally in the NHL. So that's like 22. But I know each of these teams had 3 goalies. They probably had 7 or 8 defensemen and, you know, 13 or 14 forwards. Just make it like an even 30 number, right? That's your roster.
Right.
So you could have these role players on the team for teams that you need to grind it out, that is in their forte. But when you play teams like Canada that are high flying, highly talented, you know, across the board, that, you know, I would have liked to seen Tage Thompson on this team. The kid's huge. He's like 6'6". Very good. Clayton Keller for Utah, Alex DeBrincat, so that you have the mobility of your roster where, like, maybe this game you put those three in and sit Kreider, Nelson, and Trocheck.
Right.
But and even like there was, the mess with Canada when Theodore got hurt and then somebody else wasn't feeling well. And that's when Hartley came into play. It's just make the rosters big enough that something drastically really has to go wrong to where you get to that point where, I need this person to get hurt or how many people to get hurt before, we're allowed to play them. Because the last thing you want to do on a best on best tournament is have a team play shorthanded, whether it's forward, defenseman. That's just dumb. It's dumb. Just make it so that doesn't happen, that there's enough players on the roster that are eligible, that you can intermix, whatever.
Gary Bettman, you listening? Because it looks like you got most of it right this weekend.
Oh, they got it all right. just I think, like, you're hoping there's not injuries,
right?
And you're not anticipating someone getting hurt. But they didn't. I probably anticipate it being this intense and this physical. So now that you've seen this play out and how it played out and how hard the teams played,
we got to give them some help.
Now is the time to, reflect and be like, okay, how do we minimize, this craziness of rosters? Just give them an extra, a line of forwards, a line of defensemen. You already gave them 3 goalies. So that's enough. But I would do, extra line of forwards, extra line of defensemen, and that'd be next. It'd be 5 extra players, because they do that in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like I think back in the day when the Pens were playing it, they were like the Black Aces was what they were calling them.
Okay,
and they were kind of like helping the actual team in practice, being like the scout team for the other team or whatever. But that's really the only tweak that I would make to this is just make sure that they have enough players. If 3 or 4 guys go down, they're still good.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't have to deal with it.
Okay.
But I do want to say it was interesting to me that, like, at the beginning of the game, and Cooper stayed with Bennington, even though all the media was questioning his ability and this, that, and the other. But St. Louis Blues won the Stanley Cup championship against Boston, in Boston. And that's where they played this game.
Yeah, I knew he was going to bring that up. Go ahead.
And oh my God, like I've liked Bennington as a goalie, from just because I love that he's a feisty, like he takes no crap. He'll skate out of his crease to, go have words with a player that, slashed him when the puck was in his glove or whatever. He's a feisty kid, but he's also a confident kid. And yeah, he let some stinkers in, but
he was standing tall the other night, man. He was,
yeah, but like he's capable of what he did Thursday night all the time.
What?
You know what I mean? And he absolutely stonewalled the USA in that third period
100%.
and the overtime. And how he didn't get the MVP is beyond me, because he played outstanding. And
hey, there was one sequence, not to cut you off, but I did, of course. There was one sequence with a minute plus left, and he made some crazy save when he was literally on the ice on his back. And I was like, I forgot who was chopping down there down there in the crease, man. But I was like, man, this guy looks like he's gonna be. That's when I said to myself, I said, Canada's gonna win this thing, because he's been unbelievable, especially in the third period, man, and like you said, in overtime, man. So shout out to Binghamton.
Yeah, hey, kudos to you, brother. That was a spectacular game.
Yes,
and you deserve the recognition because you played outstanding.
Craig Bennington.
And what did I say coming into this whole tournament when we were looking at rosters? I said, you know, my only thing with Canada is their goaltending.
Well,
You know what I mean? And that was the only question mark I had where they measured up against like the USA. And Hellebuck had a great game. You know, it's just, you know, the one that McKinnon scored, he couldn't see. You know, it is what it is. But like, I just think like this whole game, like the intensity, the way teams played, the whole 9 yards, like this did a lot for hockey.
100%.
Like this could be the catalyst now that, like, if you saw, like, if you watched the game and you actually paid attention intermission wise and whatnot, like that whole Boston area, like all the bars and all the people in there, you know, watching the game, you know, I bet you that downtown was electric for you know, an exhibition game. And I saw too, you know, just a side note that like it came out. I saw an article, I think it was last evening, but I guess Crosby gave a big motivational speech to the players. And he basically said, I'm not going to win with the Pittsburgh this year. And I really want this. I really want to win this game. And sure enough, they went out and McDavid sealed it. But, you know, it's whatever they come up with going forward. I want to see less all-star games. I don't like the 3-on thing. Like, I know I bashed on the unrivaled, but it's the same thing. That's like 3-on-3, you know, whatever they're doing for the NHL All-Star game. No, that's not hockey to me.
It's yes, when I think when you do stuff like that, it gets gimmicky, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like the players really don't want to do it anymore. They don't, you know what I mean? And
play hockey.
Yeah, and like, but that's the thing is like Subban said, like in hockey you can't go out and go through the emotions. You have to play with passion, and like all the fans can see this, that there's no emotion in that game. There's no passion. It's kind of like they're just there skating around doing their thing.
Right.
And that's where I just can't get on board with the normal. Like I'll be honest, like I DVR the skills challenge and I don't even watch the All-Star game. I don't care. I'd rather watch the skills challenge, and that's it.
I think hockey, the NHL, Gary Bettman has called into something. Hopefully they'll do like you said, Dan. They'll package this in a way that every 2 years or whatever how the consistency they do it, along with the Olympics, of course, they do it and make it where this time of the year, you know, you take how long did they take out? They took out like a week and a half off for this.
Yeah, it was the 12th through the 20th, so yeah, they were probably off the 10th.
8, 9
and then today's the first game, so the 22nd.
So, maybe they do something like that. Other All-Star games, well, the NFL doesn't have one. The NBA has been being in battle all this week, and MLB, they had something where they had their when they were talking about, hey, if you win this, you get home advantage in the World Series, which I thought that was the dumbest thing. When Buck Sidley did that for MLB. So hopefully, like I said, this is a win-win-win for the NHL. They can build in some momentum, and you know that's what it is, man. Dan, any final thoughts? I think we had something else you had to mention before we go. There you go.
This is my little bobblehead of Mr. Mike Lang. He was the broadcaster for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Many years on radio, then TV, and then he went back to radio. He passed away, I believe, last week or this week. I believe he was 76. But, you know, shout out to him. You know, thoughts and prayers for his family. I grew up on this guy calling games. Whether it was on, you know, listening when I couldn't watch a game, listening to it on the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And he was such a good dude. And he had some of the craziest sayings, you know, Like if you go back and watch, highlights of the Penguins when they beat the Minnesota North Stars in the championship, and his goal calls. And I saw a thing I think it was might have been on YouTube, where
Right.
they did a thing for, him, where he was on there and then he was talking to the radio station WDVE back in Pittsburgh, and he was talking about the Yager stories when they're going to retire his jersey, and that Yager's trying to give him a catchphrase to use. And like he gave him one, he's like, "Sorry, I can't do that one. You got to work on that. You got to give me a better one." And it took him like a year to get him a catchphrase. And I think it might have been the smoked him like a bad cigar.
Wow.
Or it was one of his catch. It was Michael motorcycle, scratch my back with a rusty hacksaw. He had some good ones. And to this day, I still believe they play the same saying at the end of the Penguins game when they win. And his, the one that probably everybody knows is Elvis has just left the building. So shout out to him. Like I said, I grew up listening to him for good 30 plus years. So,
yeah, and he was broadcasting for 50 years plus.
Yeah, he had a long career in Pittsburgh.
Legendary voice, Mike Lane for the Pittsburgh Pens. He passed away on last week, man. Like I said, like Dan said, thoughts and prayers to his family, man. Legendary voice. And when those legendary voices, some of them are passing us by, man, we give them kudos. That's why you got to give them their flowers when they are around and they are still alive, man, especially those that do it right, especially those that are just so captivating and, So anything else, Dan?
Well, just real quick, for those hockey fans, that are out there, the NHL starts again today, and it looks like it's an all-day event. ABC at 12:30 has got Minnesota and Detroit. Edmonton plays Philly in Philly at 1. The second game on ABC is going to be the Washington Capitals and Ovechkin going for, his goals to catch Gretzky. They'll be playing in Pittsburgh, and then your New York Rangers are traveling all the way to Buffalo, New York, to take on the Buffalo Sabres at 5:30, but that's on ESPN Plus. And then there's a whole gamut of games going on the rest of the day. Yeah, Carolina plays Toronto in Toronto at 7. That should be a good one. But yeah, we're back, and then tomorrow we got you boys in Pittsburgh. That's on TNT at 3:00 or 3:30. So we got a whole weekend full of hockey. So.
Hockey is back, and Dan lights the lamp again.
But I do believe I called winner on this one when we had the interview with Bruce.
You did. You absolutely did, man.
I mean, it's not that I'm anti-American. You just know.
You know the talent.
You know the talent, and you know the pride. Yep. And like I said, that crest on the jersey is more important than anything else to those guys. Like I said, even in an exhibition game, it means something.
Gotcha. Dan, we're going to get out of here. Make sure you like, click, and subscribe to the channel. Those on the podcast side, make sure in the sound of my voice, you give us that 5-star review. Go ahead, Dan. You had one other thing?
I was just going to say, if you're listening to this or on the pod, or if you're watching the video on YouTube, get at me in the comments. Let me know what you liked about this tournament. Let me know what you didn't like about this tournament, or what you would like to change. I'd be really interested to hear some opinions of people that have watched the tournament and what they thought of it. So, get at me. Let me know.
Gotcha. He's Dan K, the Hockey Dude. I'm Kevin L1, your host and moderator. On behalf of both of us, man, this is the Sports Chasers podcast. Y'all be good. Y'all be great. Y'all have a wonderful weekend, man. And hey, enjoy hockey this weekend. Talk to y'all later. Peace.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Sports Chasers podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms, and connect with us on all social media channels for exclusive content and updates. We'd also love for you to join the conversation, share your thoughts, and become part of the Sports Chasers community. And remember to tune in next time for some more real sports talk. Until then, stay frosty.